common experience for those facing severe mental disorder is being encouraged by well-meaning friends or family to just choose to feel differently, to be happier, to be less anxious, to pay attention, to just get over it. A young woman facing anorexia spoke of someone telling her to just eat. You know how important it is to take care of your body, don't you? Another woman we interviewed who had struggled with depression said, "It's hard for family and friends to understand that you are really, really, really not doing this intentionally. It goes without saying that this kind of help, though well-intentioned, can make things a lot worse." Over time, individuals who are struggling can start to internalize these subtle criticisms. Among other things, these kinds of "if you would just shape up" attitudes reflect one reason why ongoing research into the biology of mental disorder is crucial. In recent decades, neuroscience researchers have begun to document how the body can arrive at a point where one's basic capacity to think, feel, or live well can be constrained and limited in profound ways. In other words, science is starting to show us that problems such as these are real, and not simply a result of being lazy or just having a bad attitude. Mental and emotional pain is real in all of its forms, and the biological research is helping us understand that. Unfortunately, though, important details about the precise role of this biology are often overlooked. The result is that we end up having a black and white conversation with only two possibilities. Either a problem like ADHD is biological in nature, or not. Have you ever heard people debating nature versus nurture, or environment versus genes? That's what we're talking about. These splits, of course, are oversimplifications of the way things really are. The reality is that any human experience is biological in some way. Everything we do in a body. Whether that's eating dinner, driving a car, watching television, or taking a nap. They all involve biological processes, from appetites and hormones to chemical levels and neural pathways. For this reason, maybe we should consider talking about something more than whether or not various mental disorders are biological or not. In place of this debate, what if we gave more attention to another question? How exactly is a condition like depression, an eating disorder, or ADHD biological? By shifting attention to this other question, a whole new conversation begins. When you start looking at how exactly or in what ways a condition like depression is biological, the first thing you discover is that, surprisingly, there are very different ways of answering that question. We'll start with the view most common until the last 10 to 15 years. As recently as 15 years ago, neuroscientists believed the mature adult brain was set in place and static, meaning that it couldn't change. We've always known, of course, that the brain changed rapidly during childhood and adolescence. The belief at the time, however, was that as individuals matured into their adult years, their brains became set in ways that were permanent for the rest of a person's life. This idea goes back an entire century to beliefs a few scientists proposed at the time based on limited evidence. From chemical levels to neuronal networks, the function and structure of the brain was understood for most of the last century to be largely permanent and set in place. This idea hasn't necessarily gone away. In one of my studies, I interviewed a woman and asked her, "How would you define depression?" And she responded, "It's that little glitch in my brain that doesn't produce the chemical that lets me be happy and content." That's not an abnormal view of depression, that it's a fixed, static, semi-permanent contribution to what you're feeling.
Oftentimes, the message is that the brain's got a permanent deficiency of some sort, biochemical or whatnot.
The old way of thinking within the neuroscience community was essentially the brain develops, and that once it's fully developed, it's not very changeable. And then we thought, again, as a field, that we're pretty much done. The brain is in a stable state, and what will happen after that is just neural death. And that process is just cognitive decline on the way down. And that's kind of the way we were as a field of neuroscience. We didn't know that the brain is capable of changing.
So what does it mean for individuals and families facing serious mental and emotional problems when they understand the brain in this way? In the next class discussion, we'll turn to that question.